Welcome to part 2 of my nerdy pep talk about partisan violence. Part 1 can be found in my pep talks playlist. When we last left our prisoner's dilemma in the dark night, both boats had a detonator for the other boat. They needed to either blow the other boat up or wait until midnight to both be blown up. First, we take a look at the prisoner's boat. The most formidable inmate of the bunch walks up to the guard who is currently holding the detonator, and he says, "You don't want to die, but you don't know how to take a life. Give it to me. These men would kill you and take it anyway. Give it to me and I'll do what you should have did 10 minutes ago." He takes the detonator and chucks it out the window and sits down. On the other boat, a civilian walks up to the boat captain holding their detonator, and he says, "No one wants to get their hands dirty. Fine, I'll do it. Those men on that boat, they made their choices. They chose to murder and steal. It doesn't make any sense for us all to die too." He takes the detonator, and he can't push the button. Both groups are somehow able to differentiate between the actual villain, the Joker, and the individuals on the other boat. If the Joker had been driven by data rather than dogma, he would have realized this experiment was likely to fail. First, there is data showing that partisan violence is primarily inflamed by leadership's rhetoric, and similarly toned down by leadership's rhetoric. My argument is that 2 de facto leaders emerged that day to supersede the Joker's intended leadership: the inmate and the civilian who ended up not pushing the detonator button. But probably the most impactful piece of data is that very few people in the US, outside of any perception of what the other party is doing, agree or commend partisan violence. When the chips are down, we the people do not, in fact, eat each other. But my social media feed was full of violence, you say. Yeah, you need to stop using social media as a barometer for we the people. It is highly inflammatory and very left and right wing. As I've said in other pieces, independent moderates rule this country, and don't let your internet tell you anything differently. In The Dark Knight, the Batman does thwart the Joker's attempt to punish both boats for their moral code. But of course, real life rarely works out this way. There are plenty of times where you can stand for all the right things, do all the right things, and still suffer and possibly perish. Trust me, I can give you plenty of personal experiences of my own to demonstrate. But I fully stand by what I originally said in the wake of Kirk's assassination. Evil undoes itself, and we should never be too eager to deal out death in judgment. What this data is showing us is that good in the form of visionary leadership and communication across the aisle can overcome the evil of partisan violence. So I leave you with this final thought. Be brave enough to throw the detonator out the window. Be wise enough to know when you are being pitted against each other by one or maybe more maniacs. Be just enough to denounce violence as anything other than a completely unproductive and sometimes lethal waste of human life. And be loving. You're worth living a life full of love. End lecture.